Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Low-Key Brothers podcast. My name is James, and this is my brother Stefano. So, just for our first episode, how did we exactly come across the idea of creating this podcast, Stefano?
Yeah, sure. So as James mentioned, we're brothers, right? Like we're pretty close to each other. We talk on the phone almost every day, and usually conversations we have, like we're talking about some problems that we're facing in our lives, and giving advice to each other. Um, and like someday we just like thought about why don't we why don't we have these conversations, but like on something like a podcast on a platform, right? So like people can actually listen to what we're saying and like because we think obviously some maybe there are some other people that are going through the same thing, right? And we can help them out um by talking about experiences and like maybe how we could adapt it and overcome some of this stuff. Um so yeah, that's who we came up with the idea of the podcast, and like hopefully there are some of you guys that can identify with some of this stuff, and like it can help you guys out, but yeah, just like to not make it too boring, like well, why don't we give the a little bit of context about ourselves as a person.
Well, I'll start off and giving you guys some information about my background. So, I was born and raised in Minnesota. I'm 18 years old. I'm currently a Division One swimmer at University of Wisconsin Green Bay.
Not for too long though, not for too long.
Yeah, that's
uh
true. Yeah, I will be transferring. You guys can find that out soon where I go.
we're not going to get
Um,
into details right now, but
yeah, classified, classified. But
yeah.
soon I will let you guys know. Um, but I've been swimming the majority of my life. I do training. I'm a human biology major on premed track, and you know, once Stefano explains his life, you can see like even though we're brothers from another mother, you can see how our lives are very, very different, even though we talk to
But
each other so often.
yeah, very very different, but like at the end they connect, right? And I think that's pretty cool. Yeah, so now I'll say a little bit about my background, and it'll make more sense at the end why we call the podcast Low Key Brothers. So yeah, I'm originally from Chile, South America. Moved to the U.S. About 6 years ago. Always lived in Minnesota since then. So yeah, I moved here in 2020. I started college right away. It was during COVID, tough times. Moved here, didn't know anyone, so classes were online. Hard to meet people that way. Um, anyways, after my first semester, I realized, okay, college is very, very expensive here in the US. So I had to do something about it. I just couldn't pay out of pocket. Then I found out about, the military. Initially, I was going to join the Marine Corps. That didn't work out. So I ended up joining the National Guard here in Minnesota. Um, I did that my freshman and sophomore year. I was like, okay, I'm still paying, some out of pocket, and like, um, it's still kind of a lot. It was a lot for me at the time. Then I decided to do ROTC at the University of Minnesota. So at the time I graduated, got my degree. I also became an infantry officer in the Minnesota Guard. It's been an awesome experience so far. I've worked in many different things ever since I moved here. Um, right now, I'm working in sales. I'm loving it. I love to be able to solve problems, for customers, for people, and that's what we want to do here in this podcast. Like try to help out. Um, but yeah, that's a little bit about me. We'll talk more about ourselves while we do the podcast. But that's just a quick intro.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of helping people, the main purpose of this episode, besides introducing ourselves, is going to be like, with me being a D1 swimmer and having to find times in my life where I've needed to find motivation, and with you being an army officer and having to find times in your life with when you've needed motivation, along with, you've graduated college and I'm only in my first year, so you have had to find motivation throughout your academic career with that. But just going ahead as we go over our experiences, the there's some things that you guys will be able to pick up that hopefully you can take from our stories and apply to your own lives to perhaps find motivation in your context.
Yeah, and like a lot of times when we talk about motivation, first of all, you're not always going to have motivation. And I think like, oh, you guys know that. Um, but a lot of times you see on social media or somewhere in the internet, these quotes about motivation, and like you have this guy's like, oh, like get up at 4 in the morning, and like everyone has the same 24 hours, and that's not the reality sometimes. It's like um what we want to do here, we'll go over some motivational quotes and some stuff like that, and just like talk about what we think about them and like how we can apply them to our experiences, and like um yeah, why don't you go ahead, James, and share the quote.
Yeah, so that's awesome. So I found this quote by Arthur Ashe. He was an African American civil rights advocate, and he was also a great tennis player. And he also gave us this amazing quote that we have here, and it's start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. You know, that really resonates with me in my mind. But go ahead, Stefano. What do you think about this quote?
Yeah, I think it's an awesome quote. Out of all the quotes, the motivational quotes that are out there, I think this one um clicks with me a lot, and I think like it can, a lot of people can feel identified by it. Um I'm gonna go line by line of talking about the quote and like how um I can see it applied to my life. Like, start what you are, first line right there. Um Sometimes in life we think like where we are right now, it's not a good place, it's not the right time. And we just think, okay, I need to go through this first, or go past this, and like in a month from now, I'm gonna start doing what I want, or I'm gonna start doing what I need to do. Sometimes you just need to start where you are. Like, not all the times are going to be good times, or times where you feel comfortable, or times where your mind is clear enough, you don't have that, a lot of things going on at the same time, that you're like, okay, now is the right time to start. So I don't know what you think about James, but like I think sometimes you just gotta start. That's it. Where you are right now, and that moment and that time, you just gotta start. Take the first step.
Yeah, man. Exactly with this podcast, I think that's a really good explanation of the first line. Like even if you're already successful, even if you're at rock bottom, whatever your goal is to achieve it, you have to start exactly where you are.
Yeah, and like moving on to the second line, use what you have. You know, it kind of ties into the first line too, and in some aspects, like sometimes that you're waiting to have something else that you don't have in the moment. Like um, I'm gonna wait until I have more money, until I have this newer car to like do something. Whatever it is, I'm gonna wait up to have like that job, to start looking at something else, or getting that degree. But like sometimes it's just you got to use what you have. A lot of the times, all that you have is all that you need. In that time. Um, you know, I'll expand more about my personal experiences after we go over each line. But that's my opinion on that second line. What do you think?
Yeah, man. I think that's a really good take, Like let's say that you did have that rich car, that car that you really wanted, but like at the end of the day you're trying to like be successful for your family. All right, like maybe if you have a minivan, you know, you might be able to fit more of your kids in the minivan, but you're not gonna have like, that brand new Dodge Durango jailbreak, to like drive your kids around in. And if you want that, yes, that can be one of your goals. And you can motivate yourself to get towards that. That you can use that as motivation. Like I want to drive my kids in a Durango jailbreak, right? But if your kids' soccer practice is tomorrow, like I don't. We can go over it more after this, but like you shouldn't get down on yourself when you have to use that really old minivan that you have. You have to use what you have because to get to the goal, like you can sit there and mope or you can progress, right?
Exactly. No, I completely agree with you. and then do what you can, you know. um Going back again, like, talking about all those motivational quotes that are out there, or like influencers or whatever, that are talking about their lives and showing out their lives and how they have succeed in life. you know Sometimes, like, you just got to do what you can, and that's good enough too. You're not going to have all the tools and resources every time, and you just got to do something. Again, like, all these three lines tied to each other. um you just got to take the first step and do what you can, and understand that, and don't be too hard on yourself too, because a lot of those things that you see on social media, it's not reality. um you're not gonna get, like, going back again to, like, the point of the new car. Maybe you're not gonna get it, in a week, in a month, or even in a year. But, like, do what you can with what you have, and just take the first step and start where you are.
Success is defined by the person who is trying to achieve it, who's trying to strive for it, right? So, like, this is a separate quote, but it's a common quote, comparison is the thief of joy. Like, right. Like, even in the fitness industry, if you're at the weight room, like, you're taking a break in between sets, you're on your phone, like, you're benching, you see this like 16-year-old boy benching 3 4 plates. Like, that's very impressive, right? That's like upper end of most humans. And, like, yeah, people can achieve that natty, but, like, if a 50-year-old man who is past their prime production of testosterone is comparing themselves to, like, the development of boyhood in puberty with his hormones spiking, like, that boy will likely be able to build more muscle quickly than that 50-year-old man. And, both are like, they're having the same goal of to get in shape, right? And, some people on social media, like, they even use, like, peptides is really big now. Like, one of my buddies was like, hey, should I hop on peptides? I was like, well, you might want to hit your natural potential first, because you only get one body. But that's a whole nother topic, right? But
That's a whole another topic too. Like, like, and also, a lot of times people think, like, oh, I'm gonna hop on peptides and, like, it's gonna transform my whole body composition and, like, my whole life. No, like, you still have to put in the work. Like, you still have to do the diet and all that stuff. So it's not like it's like some magic that's gonna happen, right?
yeah, exactly. And, I think that really resonates with the doing what you can of this quote here. Why don't we go ahead and apply this to our lives and see, what we've been through, and compare this quote to our experiences? Why don't you start, Stefan?
Yeah, dude, absolutely, man. I think this quote is one quote that resonates with a lot of that's happened in my life, and a lot of what I've been through. Um, when I first moved to the U.S., like, obviously it was a whole new world, right? And I could have waited, till my English was better. Um, I could have waited till, I had maybe a good job or enough money or some savings to, like, to do some of the things I did. But I started where I was. Okay, here I am. COVID's going on. Um, I'm starting college in a couple months. Like, my English wasn't the best, and I still chose to face that challenge. Going into the unexpected. I think it's a good thing, when we step out of our comfort zone sometimes, just to test ourselves. You know, um, so I started where I was. I went through that challenge, and I used what I had. I used the level of English that I had. I used the knowledge that I had. I didn't mention this before, but I majored in neuroscience, and obviously, like, those were some uh, science heavy classes that I was taking, and a lot of the times for the presentations or, like, the papers, like, it took me double or triple the time, because, like, I had to go over a lot of words that I didn't know what they meant, or, like, if I had a presentation, I had to go over the pronunciation of those different words, and, like, doing all that extra preparation. But again, going over the first two lines, I just started where I was. I used what I had, and then I just did what I could. Like, do what you can. I did my best, obviously, because you know I think we both have the same belief. If you're going to do something, you got to go all in.
100%.
It's kind of the same when I went through basic training when I joined the army. You know, I didn't know anything about the military here. I could have waited, learn more about it. I signed my contract and I shipped out to basic in less than a month. Um, I we'll get into this later, but like I was out of shape. Um, I wasn't in the best position mentally in my life too. But again, I started where I was, used what I had, used the knowledge that I had about physical activity, and I did what I could. Um, and I think that that's what it got me to the point that I am right now. Because I always had that mentality, let's just face it. Let's just go ahead and face that challenge and like just go at it. However, whatever the outcome is, we gotta start somewhere. We gotta start by just stepping out of a comfort zone and facing that challenge. And yeah, English was a challenge. I was able to learn some of it. Right now you can tell I know some stuff. Um, it's still work in progress, but um, I was able to graduate college. It was a uphill battle too. I was able to become an officer within a couple of years that I joined the army, and that was a battle too. But and that's something we talked on the phone too when we talked um, with James. Um, not all going back to not always having that motivation, not always having the tools and resources, but just like, hey, why don't you take the first step? You know, like again, we're not going to go into details, but you're looking at transferring. You're stepping out of your comfort zone, right? Like you already have your team over there, you already know the culture, but like you're going to take the first step, and like face that challenge. You want to like, so why don't you go ahead now and talk about a little bit how this quote applies to your life.
Yeah, so, of course, not all of our viewers are going to be swimmers, so I'm going to try and provide as much context as I can. But, like, as you were talking, I was kind of thinking to myself, how can this quote apply to my life, right? And, with me transferring, I'm not training with the team or with a coach. So, like, for context on a sports team, it's so much funner when you have teammates because it's like in the heart of the sport, or even your coach, like the connection that you have with your coach, like, that makes it so much better. And now imagine this. Swimming for 2 to 6 hours a day, staring at concrete. And the only thing you have in your head is, I have to complete 50 yards or 100 yards or 200 yards 8 times, 10 times, 12 times, 16 times, all right? Or like, I have to get to that wall in this amount of time, this many pulls with my arm, even, it's it's really boring, right? Like doing it by yourself. And you have to self motivate yourself because you can't, it's not the competition that, like, normally in practice you can be competitive, you can race the guy next to you, right? You can get advice from your coach on like, what should I be hitting right now, and then they'll stand on the deck and like record you, him or her, they'll stand on the deck and record you, right? Record your time. But staring at concrete alone, staring at concrete when you're tired, like, I have school right now, so if I want to get a practice in the morning, I have to wake up 5, 6 a.m. to go to the YMCA, right? So that I can make classes after. And, it's not easy, like, I'm right now, transferring, like, I really love these boys. So of course, like, I'm mentally distraught, like, I'm physically more out of shape than I would like to be. My peak swimming performance, like, it's it's very hard, but like, there's sometimes that I sit in my car before practice, listen to music for many minutes just to get myself motivated. But like, I find that motivation. I start where I am, even if I am tired, even if I am fatigued, I use what I have. And like, I'm not gonna lie, not every day I get that, you know, 5 mile swim in per day. Sometimes, it's like, 3,000 yards to like 1 or 2 miles of swimming, and it's just quality, right? It's quality because I'm not gonna burn myself mentally and fatigue my body even more when I already have the rest of the day to go, and I want to respect myself as well. So I do what I can within limits, right?
No, that was awesome to hear, man. And like going back to what you were saying and the swimming, you staring at the concrete. I love that mentality of like sometimes it's just you against yourself. You know, it's you in your mind, it's you in your thoughts, and like that's a hard place to be in. Um, so like I think what's important is like learning sometimes how to get out of that hole, and just keep going. Hey, dude, but I also like I actually have a question though, like about swimming. We'll get more into it. You've been swimming pretty much your whole life. I've been watching you a lot of those times too, and like I can't help but think like you guys look so funny in those tiny speedos, dude. Like I want to know what's your opinion, like on the kind of like the uniform you gotta wear.
Yeah, so it's definitely like a more unique thing in the sport, like many people like non-swimmers, they'll look at it and be like, are you guys just trying to dress immodestly? Like, what is the point of putting people in spandex, right? Like, it's definitely really unique, right? But for the non-swimmers, I'm just gonna explain the context, like so when you're doing like the flip turn, like the really fast turn on the wall, right? Like if you're wearing like really baggy pants, clothing, or whatever, like it's gonna slow you down so much and you're not gonna have the mobility, right? So along with if you've ever worn swim trunks in water or like really baggy clothes, it takes a lot of drag and it sucks up a lot of water. So it makes you way slower, right? And then along with removing some of your mobility. And in swimming, every single millisecond helps, like people shave their legs because, like it is that deep. It is that deep, like just to get that feel and reduce a little bit of drag, right?
Yeah,
So
it's yeah. Go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, I mean, it's definitely unique, it's definitely weird. It's kind of weird, like a bunch of men walking around in Speedos in like broad day, like I'll go outside and play catch with my friends in my Speedos, like outside of the pool area. But like, you know, that's pretty weird in my opinion. But like it's normalized, it's fun, and it's for a purpose, so it's definitely okay.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's good. Yeah, I didn't know, dude. Like that's why I asked too. And like it's interesting about like the shaving the legs and all that stuff. Like how far you can go in order to achieve your goal. It reminds me too about like MMA fighters. Like when they gotta make weight. Like all the things they're willing to do in order to get to that goal, right? And it's just like it's like being obsessed about what you want to accomplish, what you want to achieve, right? And I think you can be obsessed about something and you can go back to this quote at the same time. Like you don't have to be like the perfect person that gets up at like 4 in the morning that just like goes at it like every day and all day and like sleeps like 2 hours, eats 8,000 calories and like all that stuff. um you can still be obsessed about your goal and like or about what you're doing and just like be obsessed about finishing that. And by starting where you are, using the tools and resources that you have, and like the more you go into it, most likely you're gonna have more and more tools and resources because you're gonna be learning more about what you're doing, and you're gonna be adapting more to the situations. But at the end of the day, it's important to do what you can. You know, um, you can take that to any level. We can talk about fitness. Like not obviously not every day you want to go to the gym or you want to go for a run or you just work out at all. Hey, go for a walk. You know what I'm saying? Like it's it's you can do something like that. All right, now we're gonna start wrapping this up, this first episode. Dude, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to like recording more episodes. We'll definitely share more stories about ourselves. We'll go more about motivational stuff too. Um, and like going back to this quote once again, we took that first step. We're starting when we are in this journey. We're using what we have. Obviously, it's not ideal. James over in Wisconsin. I'm in Minnesota. Uh, we gotta like be creative and use what we have, these resources, and to be able to go ahead and start this project that we really want to do, and we want to accomplish something here, and we're doing what we can with what we have. So I really enjoyed this first episode, James. Like, I'm looking forward to it, man. And yeah, I'm thankful. I'm getting older, so I don't know a lot of this technology stuff anymore. So like, I'm thankful for you for putting in the work too to make this happen.
Yeah, man. And like I'm just thankful that we started, man. Like I can already see like even whatever happens, like I'm glad with what happened, and I'm grateful for these open source technologies that we have, and like we're doing what we can. Like I'm out here in my college dorm, right? Like in the lounge.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this quote applies even to this situation, right? And I think everyone can use
Right.
this quote. But I think yeah, this was. We'll see if this is going to be one of our shorter episodes, but it was a great first episode, So I hope to see you guys in the next episode. Thank you, guys.
Peace out. Thank you so much, guys.
Peace.